Welcome to The Next Interview, a podcast about careers, life, and achieving our greatest potential. And now, here's your host, Doland White.
So welcome to The Next Interview. I am excited today to bring a friend on to talk about his life, his career, the journey, advice for leaders that are watching and listening today. So I want to introduce Matt Biggar with me. Matt has, we were just talking before we hit record on the podcast about how long we've known each other, because I was sending emails to an address that hasn't existed for like 6 years. So Matt, welcome to the podcast. Grateful to have you here. Thank you for taking time with me this afternoon. And I look forward to our conversation, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Honored to be here, Doland.
Thanks. So since I know you, but not everybody watching the podcast knows you, a little bit about kind of your journey to from where you started and to kind of to where you are today in a couple of minutes, but just an opportunity for people to kind of understand your path. As people understand that path, there are things and value that you bring into the conversation. I think that leaders need to hear, hence the intention for the podcast. But
yeah.
But let's kind of just start there. A little bit about your journey. Tell us a little bit about where you started and kind of how you've ended up to where you are today.
Sounds good. I would give it the moniker of navigating challenging pivots. And it began when I was an electrician. So I had chosen a career path simply because someone else had put a bug in my ear and said, "Hey, you're good at that. You should be an electrician." And so I went down that pathway, and it turned out to be misaligned for me. I didn't love it. I was miserable. All of my mentors were miserable. They're all overly critical about each other's work. And it was a bit of a toxic work environment in my experience, if I'm being honest, right?
Sure,
I
yeah.
was treated like I was an apprentice, which was almost worthless. So I just got to a point of frustration with it. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm not putting up with this anymore. And so I'm going to make a bid for something different, right? I wanted to figure it out. I was spending all my money on the weekends, drinking and partying and stuff. And because I was just miserable, I was trying to fill a void in my life.
Yeah.
So I went to the bookstore and I asked the book clerk, I'm looking for books on finances. I thought I had a money problem. I didn't know it was everything else. And so she pointed me over and I went and I picked up Increasing Your Financial IQ by Robert Kiyosaki. And most people know him for Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Sure.
The point of me sharing that is it was a catalyst moment for me that opened up my mind to this world of opportunities where I could design a life for myself and build something myself. I didn't have entrepreneurs, mentors, to follow in their footsteps. I was like kind of the first person that really in my family, made this bid for autonomy and freedom and trying to build something for myself. And so that was a catalyst moment. And then from there, it's just been a whirlwind of trying lots of different things, getting frustrated, bumping up against, product market fit, if you will, messaging. But the North Star across all the pivots that I've made, which has been considerable, like probably more than a dozen in jobs and business, the North Star has been, I have this deep-seated purpose to explore what fulfillment and meaning means in life and business. And I think the way that we get taught is that, in our career and our personal lives are separate, but they're not really. We're just one person, right? And so the way that we show up in anything is how we show up in everything else.
Yeah.
And, I was just so driven by this journey to figure out what it was that lit me up, that I was excited about, not just passion, but also purpose and meaning. And that's what led me to changing relentlessly and pivoting, and just to bring it all together into a space where I feel confident and fulfilled in the work that I'm doing to serve and support other people.
That's interesting. There's a lot in there to unpack. It kind of as through your story, Matt. When you're kind of talking about it, it's funny you mentioned that, because in my first career was being a chef, and I became a chef because my grandpa told me, "You got two choices, boy." I'm grandson of a redneck from Alabama, and he said, "You got two choices, boy. You can work in a gas station and get free gas, or you can work in a restaurant and get free food." And I thought, well, free food sounds good, then. So I spent 13 years working in restaurants and ultimately becoming a chef and all that kind of stuff, and with no passion. This completely sucks.
Yeah.
Until to go out and go find a different career and find a different life. It took a while to go do that. But it's not about my story; it's about your story. So, but it's interesting in that journey, because I think one of the things that I'd like to explore a little bit more is kind of this concept of, I think a lot of people think about whether they're, in particularly in their career, whether they're a leader or a manager or wherever they are inside of any organization, they think about, hey, look, if I make the change, the grass is always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
So if they're going to make a change and they leap over into the change, they don't think about the fact that they really need to take a hard look at it and make a pivot. So when
Yeah.
you were doing that, kind of the top maybe two or three reasons kind of why you were looking at where you were from electrician to something different, what drove the pivots, and what kind of caused you to do that? Because it's been interesting to watch I admire the direction you've gone in your career and admire what you're doing with your business. And that path is not perfect. So I'm really, really curious about your insights and advice about just about pivots.
Yeah. I would say the thread is self-discovery to discover the thread. So, every change, it was because of an inflection point where I was either feeling a lot of frustration
Yeah.
in how challenging, like, it's just like something's not working here. I'd be paying attention to my energy, even though in hindsight, like back then, I didn't know what I was doing, right? But I was kind of getting a feel for the work that I was doing, whether that would energize me or not. I only know this now, but back then I didn't. And, I used to do YouTube consulting. It was one of the things that I tried out.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that when I was working with clients on their channel, that they'd be making all these mistakes in their business that impacted the work we were doing. But I was compartmentalized and viewed as the YouTube guy, not the person that could support all the other areas. So they wouldn't come to me for advice in those, different aspects of their business. And that was a moment where I realized, wait a minute, I don't feel like I'm being valuable enough to this business owner. And that's also been a thread, this persistent, and this is just expectations for myself. I expect myself to be a person of value and impact in the work that I do. And if I'm not feeling that, then something needs to be added on, or a pivot needs to be changed, or something needs to be subtracted. Sometimes it's a combination of all three things.
Yeah.
And I think the challenging part is being courageous enough to make those decisions and know that you have this North Star. I call it congruence is your compass, right? You bring things into alignment in your life, your business, your career, so that you're showing up authentically as who you are at the core, and things get a little easier. There's just this sense of calm and peace in the work that you're doing when you're operating in alignment with what you're innately here to do. And that was the direction that I wanted to go with everything. And so that's been a thread. There's been a few of them, but that's one of the ones for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. So as you're talking about congruence, right? And that kind of the self-discovery and the thought process behind that. How, we are I think a lot of times in careers we're led to believe that we are two different people. We are that person there, they are being work, and then we are this person here in our personal life, whatever that happens to be, right? The scope of our personal life, and the two don't cross. And I agree with you very, very much that really it is, we are one being, and they're so closely intertwined that if things are awry in your career, things are awry in your relationships and in your
Yeah.
life. They're wrong.
And vice versa.
Something is wrong, and vice versa, right? There's impacts on both sides. So when you one of the things you mentioned, Matt, was kind of that discovery of yourself and that journey, which takes steps. So kind of what did you do? I mean, how did you go about that?
Yeah, I love Jim Collins' Good to Great as one of the books that I found to be profound. And I've read a lot. I've been a personal development junkie for 20 years, but that one really stood out to me. And it was because he's so good at sharing frameworks, concepts for ideas. And it was that hedgehog concept that really stood out to me. And I was like,
Yeah,
that was a light bulb moment. Wait a minute. So servant leadership, yeah, I'm on board with that. I'm here to serve and show up and lead others and empower people. That's deeply fulfilling work for me. So what's the outlet in my business? What's that economic engine? How will I make an income at it? And I've explored that a lot and tried a lot of different things out.
sure.
And then the last piece is, the way that I like to look at it, it's a little bit different than what the way that Jim breaks it down. It's the energetic alignment between the combination of your skills and strengths coming together. And that's really hard to see for yourself. You need somebody else who will prompt you or ask you questions, or knows you or takes the time to help you discover what those areas are. And we're not really taught this, to bring together our skills and strengths to
Right.
create something more potent. It was the author of the Dilbert New York Times cartoon
Yeah.
who talked about the talent stack, right? And that
Right.
was another concept that stuck out to me. I was like, that is such a great idea. Why am I thinking of all these different skills and strengths and abilities as separate? I'm just one person. So why not stack them together to give myself a fighting chance at making a successful business?
Yeah. It's interesting. In a lot of cases, so in my up until April-ish of this year, I was chief operating officer, as you know, for a big training company. And one of the things I had, one of the founders, one of the family members there, and I were talking about. We were talking about superpowers and being able to recognize your superpowers. It's a Clint Eastwood moment, I suppose. A man's got to know his limitations. Um,
Yeah.
or there's Dirty Harry today asking you're sick. Anyway, we won't get into that's in movie quotes, but there is kind of that moment where you really do have to think about, well, who am I, and what are my strengths and weaknesses, and what do I want to leverage, and what do I want to tune up.
Yeah.
And by tuning them up and combining them together, it does give you the opportunity. I think one of the things people forget in business is core value zero is you have to be a profitable company.
Yeah.
There has to be an economic engine, and it's not about the money. It's
Right.
about what you do with the money,
Yeah.
because you can't care for your team or your family or other people unless you build that economic engine. So it's kind of
Right.
interesting to hear you talk about kind of building that path in your business that led to, but while thinking about how do I take these things and build an economic engine.
I think the misnomer with the servant leadership too is that we kind of get caught up in this idea that, we can become caregivers, where we're like sacrificing our own well-being to lead other people. when, and sometimes there's a
Yeah.
misconception, right? That we're like, that's the way that it has to be done. And what I found to be true is the most effective way to show up with energy, passion, purpose, and focusing on empowering other people is to take care of yourself first, and investing in yourself, investing in coaches to support you, continuing your learning journey. Investing in yourself is one of the most critical aspects to becoming that servant leader.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, because I do think a lot of people mistake the concept of servant leadership around, like, I guess probably not a completely appropriate way to call it, the soft underbelly of leading. It's kind of like, that's not what it's not what it's about. It's not about rolling over. It really is about leadership, and being a proper servant means there are times when you have to have radical candor and you have to have a tough conversation, or you have to make a tough decision because you're serving a value, or serving a cause, or serving something that, there's an outcome that you're working towards. So
Yeah.
you also mentioned um, a word. I want to go back and explore a little bit, because I'd like to hear more about what you think it means. There's big words that we use in leader, in industry. There's trust and accountability, and blah blah blah. It's like saying I'm going to the doctor. Well, is it a brain surgeon, a dentist, a chiro? Who are you going to go see? But the word you used was value.
Hmm.
So, kind of in your path, and the people that, the clients you work with, and the people that you've assisted over the years, you've firsthand had to look at, there was another sentence you said about, I felt like I wasn't bringing value because there's other things I could do, but I was viewed as the YouTube guy.
Right.
So just talk a little bit more about value. So what's value, and how do you know it's value?
I think that's what led me to coaching, to be honest with you. So, um, it's one of those things that it kind of gets regurgitated, repeated a lot, right? Like, you have to be more valuable, or you have to create valuable content. It's a baseline expectation in the modern era. Like, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's the truth about value.
Yeah.
For me, it goes back to the skill stack. If I desire to be a person who is valuable to other human beings, then I strategically look at, okay, I've got this skill set, which I would put in the category of communication skills, right? I was a videographer, I was a trainer, mentor, lots of different roles, and communications was always a thread ever since I left the electrical trade.
Sure.
So, what can I add on to increase my effectiveness in supporting other people? What skills, knowledge can I acquire? Because I'm always learning, right? Growth mindset. Like, I will always be learning for the rest of my life. And by the way, I was in a place of depression when I stopped learning. I felt stagnant. I
Interesting.
felt stuck.
Huh.
I was not being the full expression of who I could be. And so that's what I mean when I say, becoming a person who's of more value to other people, especially when it comes to leadership. It's investing in the coaching, it's investing in acquiring new skills, building up your strengths, learning more about yourself, self-discovery as well. I think that that's really, really, really critical. If you want to be your true, authentic self in your work, in your life, no matter what you are, where you are, and feeling good about who that person is, then you have to learn about you. And that's actually a great way to be of more value to others. So that's what I would share on the topic of value.
No, that's good. That's very interesting, because I think value is a word. To your point, there's a lot of definitions behind it. People, well, my job is to bring value, and value is equated to money, right? If I'm not closing
I didn't
deals,
even
or if
say
I'm not,
money.
yeah, right. There's things get associated with that.
Yeah.
But I do think I also think that one of the things, as a leader that I've seen you unravel with other folks and in conversations with me as we've kind of bantered things back and forth is really that discovery on what value is. Because I think value is, it's like the word success. Success is a very unique individual term,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
everybody defines their success differently. My success
Right.
is different than yours.
Yeah.
Um,
And what better way to figure it out than to be introspective instead of trying to aspire to external validation
yeah,
with
I,
success, right? Because it's not a good place, because you're always chasing, and you're always trying to climb a mountain and get approval from other people. The what I found about feeling successful is that it is a choice that you get to make and define for yourself.
yeah,
So I love that you said that.
yeah. It's interesting. There's an affirmation that I use. There's 3 affirmations I use each morning on self-image. And one of the affirmations, I'll probably butcher it, but it kind of goes like this, I don't compare myself to other people. Rather, I compare myself to who I was yesterday.
Yeah.
Because that's who I want to be. Matthew McConaughey talks about his hero as himself in 10 years. Um, so yeah, I think that's where value. When we find self-value, and you touched on transformation and kind of the importance of it. And I think for in the case of leaders, I think that there's a lot of time. It's easy to, I spent a year, Matt, at one point reading. I set a goal. I'm going to read one business book a week, and I
It's
did.
ambitious.
I read a
Did you
bunch
do
of
it?
all kinds of business books. And about a year ago, I walked them all to a little library, and they don't even take them anymore. They kind of went, "Yeah, thanks. We don't want your business books." Um, but there's a difference between reading and studying.
Hmm.
And that opportunity to, you can read a book, but what you do with it, it's kind of like, good to great.
Yeah.
And talking about hedgehog, there's a difference between I can read the book, but then you take it into thought and you find a way to
Right.
apply it to the right thing, which in that case, you're looking at, how do I apply this to my life?
Yeah.
And that's a component of transformation. There's a bunch of other, you know, places to go for there's Troward and Troward and Bob Proctor and Mary Morrissey and Tony Robbins and all kinds of places. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it's interesting. So
I
as
call
part of
that
your
mindful influences, right? Because we
yeah
live in this era of opportunity, information overwhelm,
yeah
right? It's daunting if you let it be, but we get to choose what we allow to influence us, and we only have so much mental bandwidth and energy every day for processing information. So why not focus on what aligns most for you?
yeah it's funny because the I call it kind of Instagram syndrome. It's kind of like when you open
Yeah,
Instagram in your hand, right, and you start scrolling
instant
up.
rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's instant rabbit hole, and then all of a sudden, there's an ad, and you're in it, and in your 2 second, and you're in 2 seconds, and 2 seconds, and 2 seconds, and 2 seconds, because of the instant availability of people trying to influence your thought to take
Right.
an action or do something different.
Yep.
And we both market our businesses at the same time, which we have that. Hopefully, we're not, kind of that we're not spamming people with that stuff, but that there is that instant access to information, but it is that pause to stop, be introspective,
Hmm.
and convert what you're reading and understanding into value. And value, in my mind, the rest of the equation is how do I go act on that?
Yep.
Because without action, value is just a hobby.
Right. You might as well be learning something that's valuable enough to you that you'd want to teach it back to somebody else.
Yeah, that's the fun way to do it, isn't it?
That's a good way to put it into action, right?
Yeah,
I think Jim Quick says this: if you teach it, you get to learn it twice.
that is true. That is true.
So, but
Every
yeah,
time,
action and what you do with it. Like I mentioned earlier, right? I was a personal development junkie. That meant buying online courses, consuming endless content, and reading every book I could possibly find on business or personal development.
yeah,
And there's a lot of valuable insights in there. but it's none of it really matters. I can't retain all of it. It's not possible.
No,
So
can't be done.
why not focus on what you can actually put in and implement as immediately as possible, for sure.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes good sense. It is the key word is implement, is action,
Yeah.
and experimenting and not being afraid to mess up and then
Oh,
get up
man.
and dust off the Kaizen saying, right fall 6, rise 7. Dust
Yeah.
off and dust off, get up and go again.
The last thing you need to do is carry any level of guilt around the mistakes that you've made, and really just accept that you're a human being, right? You're going to make mistakes and turn those into learning opportunities. I think for some reason, when we become adults, we have these expectations of ourselves that not only do we have to know everything about something before we try it, but we also aren't allowed to make any mistakes and be awkward because
Yeah, yeah.
judgment or whatever's coming up for us, right? But
Yeah.
when you're a kid, like, you're genius, you're creative,
Yeah.
right? Before that kind of it can get ironed out of you by society, right? It's
Yeah.
that genuine curiosity and creativity is one of the things that I love showing people how they can reconnect to it, because we get so much inspiration and ideas for creative problem solving, which is essential to leadership, business, career. The more effective we can become at creative problem solving, the better.
Yeah.
So, having space, no matter how busy you are, to get creative and do something that you're naturally drawn to, it fills you up for everything else, right? I mentioned to you earlier, Dolan, I love disc golf. Most people don't even know what that means. We throw frisbees at chain baskets on golf courses.
Yeah.
There's 40,000 of these courses all over the world.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Did
It's
not know
so
that.
much fun.
Wow.
And it just energizes me to get out into nature and throw some, I call it hunting chains.
Wow. That's
Throwing
cool.
discs at chains, right? So have like an outlet of some kind, no matter how busy you are, that is something that fills you up, and only you can really figure that out.
That's cool. We'll have to find a mutual reason to take a trip to Scotland and go play the courses there. There's got to be those courses in Scotland somewhere. We got to,
Probably.
and I have a kilt, so we could fit in. It would be great. We
Are
could
you
do that.
Scottish?
No, not by any means, by any
I
way,
have
shape, or
Scottish
form.
ancestors.
You know, but I do own a kilt. But another
Nice.
different podcast. So you know, it's interesting because as you kind of you talk about kind of your transition in career and pivots and great idea, great concepts around, you know, I think I do agree with you. I think as adults, and in particularly when you get that brand, oh, you're a leader now. You get the tattoo and you get a special shirt and, you know,
Yeah,
a
you better have a
business
collared shirt.
card and it says leader, right? On the bottom of the
Yeah.
business card. And there's fear, uncertainty, and doubt that kind of comes along with that, I think. And a lot of it is the
Yep.
fear of making a mistake or being seen to make mistakes or
Mm-hmm.
being seen to be fallible. And
Right.
there's kind of a punitive nature to it, where as a leader or a manager, you kind of feel like, well, if I mess this up, I could get, you know, they could always replace me, or I could, you know, things could go wrong. And then what happens? Then there's meteors that are going to hit the earth and they're going to
Yeah, you
create
start
potholes,
future thinking. You're
or
not being
or
present.
or golf ball size hail that are going to hit the cars.
Yeah.
And not that
Yeah.
talk about, you know, stuff like that. But I do think that that's, you know, to teach people and help people who are in a leadership position or in an executive position remember that it's okay to have a plan. Don't just
Mm.
step off the edge of a cliff, but to give them the support and the thinking. How do you think through that so you can move forward? You can step forward with confidence
Yeah.
and at least go give it a try.
Yeah.
And
Get
don't wait for
support too,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
Like, common message. I'm gonna preach this all day long. I hire coaches, I work with coaches. I think if you're in a leadership position, it's depending on what kind of role you're in, you can get squeezed from the top down and the bottom up. You've got all these people looking up to you,
Mhm.
relying on you. But then sometimes you also have other leaders above you that are kind of like, there's expectations and there's a lot of responsibility. And so get the support that you need, whatever that looks like for you. Don't try to tough it out and be fiercely DIY and wearing that badge of honor that, like, walking around like you've got this. You're a human being. You're allowed to make mistakes, and it's okay to get support.
Yeah, I think that's a key. That's a really important message. It's okay, and there's support means lots of mentorship, friends that you can go talk to,
Yeah.
peers, people who are past where you are, who've already been on this journey, who can say, let me tell you what's going to happen, young man, when you step off that curve. There will be a
Yeah.
bus that hits you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Challenges are going and frustrations are going to arise
yeah, and
no
it's
matter what
okay.
path you walk in life.
Yeah, it's okay. What you're hoping for is you can walk away. So
Yeah.
at least
And learn
that's
something while you do it.
it's not a fatality. Anyway, that's a nice positive note. So as kind of for where you are now, as we kind of come down to the end of our time together, at least for what we plan for this podcast, um, I know as your career has expanded and the things that you do with businesses has expanded over the last couple of years, which is really interesting because I think you are a unique individual as I've watched you for the years, the different perspectives that you bring around credibility and stepping out of fear and into the light and putting together a plan and thinking about your skill stack. All of those things that you've talked about, the Matt that I've gotten to know that brings all of those things. What what kind of what kind of people do you work with? What kind of people do you want to work with? Is kind of my first question.
Yeah, I love working with people who have this drive inside of them that they cannot ignore any longer, that there is more purpose and meaning, and they want to take that leap of faith and try their absolute best to figure out what that representation, the full expression of who they are, brought together into a beautifully simple business looks like for them. I love operating as a sounding board and a coach and a guide, a mentor, a trainer, all of these roles. That's my sweet spot. And I have this way of prompting people and getting these answers out of them that they wouldn't have seen themselves. And that's what lights me up. When they start to have these realizations that there's this creative and unique way for them to bring this stuff together in a way that is the full expression of who they are, and to build a business off of that. I think that that's a beautifully simple business and it doesn't need to be complicated. So that's what I would share with you. People who are in the early stages of considering whether or not it makes sense for them to make a transition from a career that maybe isn't quite, I'm trying to be nice about this, but maybe they just really don't like what they're doing anymore. That was me, right? That was me many times.
It makes sense.
Eh,
I mean, we'll use the word, right? The word is suck.
yeah.
So when
If you
you're in
don't
that
suck,
spot
you're
and
in a career you
everything's
hate, like that's a situation I can definitely resonate with. And some point in time, some of us get to a point where we're just fed up and we're ready for something more. And that is a catalyst moment when someone is a great coaching candidate to help them bring everything together, because the desire and the drive and the motivation with this North Star of I want to build a business of purpose and freedom is a prerequisite to making it work. I've persevered for 7 years going on 8, and I've been through a lot of challenges and frustrations along the way, but I never gave up.
yeah. Yeah, that's exciting. It's about the never giving up and the pivot. So those that are going to hear this, if somebody wants to in the show notes, obviously will be links to your website and other kinds of things. Do you have any preferred way that people can reach out to you or send them to the website? send them to an email that says,
Let's go LinkedIn, my friend. That's how we met. It's my favorite platform. It's, from my perspective, the ultimate social media platform in terms of relationship development. Whether you are
good.
in a career or a business, it doesn't matter. It is the best place to network and meet people. So that's linkedin.com/in/Matt Biggar, MattBiggar.
Good. Cool. Good. Well, I will encourage everybody listening, in particularly if you're in a position where there's moments in time where you're thinking through, is this right for me? I want to step out and I want to do something that's on my own, and what does it mean and how do I do it? Matt's a great resource to go spend time, reach out to him, set up a call, go hang out. Even if for whatever the outcome is from that call, whether you engage with Matt or not, you'll walk away thinking better, feeling better, or not, or stay where you are. You'll at least come away with some insights that you didn't have going into it. So I would encourage you to take a little bit of time and reach out to Matt. On that note, I'm going to thank you for being on the podcast with me here and being in the first 10 guests. So
Thanks, Doland. My pleasure.
So I appreciate that. And the final point is the plug for the podcast. If you've enjoyed this podcast, subscribe on YouTube, give us a like on Apple, give us a like on Spotify, listen to the message, pardon me?
Share it.
Oh yeah. And share it. Thank you. That's why I'm working with pros who can help me do that. Share it. Tell somebody about it. Look, the intention is, there's a lot of great information that Matt's given you today. It's an opportunity for you to share some of this information with someone else that may change their day. Changing their day may change their life. So go do that. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Matt.
You've been listening to The Next Interview. For more information about today's guest, be sure to visit the show notes. If you enjoyed the show, give us a follow and be sure to join us here on The Next Interview.